Hello, and welcome to my video lecture on the use of labels, and particularly the for attribute of labels with controls on your data entry form. So here, again, if you've seen some of these previous videos, is my index HTML form. I've got my header section, I've got my body section. Inside my body section, I have my form. Inside my form, I have labels and I have inputs. Um, for a variety of reasons, none the least of which is for the use of assistive devices for users that have some kind of issue. You can change labels and add a for attribute to them. The for attribute associates a label directly with a control. So in this case, I can say for first name, which would associate this label with this text box. And I can do that for all of my text boxes that I currently have on my form. And that would associate all of my labels with their text boxes. Now, looking at the web browser, this is what it currently looks like. If I click on any of the labels, nothing happens. That functionality really isn't going to change by me doing this. If I refresh it, it's still not actually going to do anything if I click on the labels. And that's the case with most controls except for controls such as radio buttons and checkboxes. So, other than putting these in place for assistive technology for users with disabilities, let's take a look at the effect it has on radio and checkboxes. So here I've got a little example of some radio and checkboxes that I'm going to copy and put into my HTML form. And I'm going to put those right there, and I'm going to tab them in so they're a little bit more in line with the rest of my project. And here I've got my inputs, my radio, these are radio buttons associated with picking the crust associated with a pizza and some toppings. Nothing crazy. If I save that and I run that in my HTML browser, you can see that if I click on any of the labels, it doesn't do anything. I can still click on the actual controls, but clicking on the labels doesn't do anything. And I also notice that my submit button is not exactly where I want it. So I'm going to go back. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a break or two at the end of my olives so that my input button will be a little lower away from this list box, these check boxes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to look at these labels. So what I've done is I've set up labels instead of just this, which would just be the display. What I have here for these labels is I actually changed them to labels. So here I'm going to grab this label just to show you how it changes. I'm going to go back to my HTML form, and instead of just putting thin crust, I'm going to make that a label. In this case, the label it's common to be for the label to be to the right side of the radio button, and I don't have a break here, so these two controls are going to be right next to each other. So I'm going to have an input control that's a radio button, and then right next to it I'm going to have a label, and then in the label I will associate it with the crust control. And I don't need this anymore because my label will take care of that for me. So there's my label. Oh, actually I do need that. What am I doing? So there's my label, and there's the information that's in it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that for all of these. So I'm just going to grab this out. Well, I'll show you how to do it directly. So here, this is not a label. This is just text showing up on the form. What I want to do is actually make that a label. So I'm going to add in my label element. And then inside my label element, I'm going to give it a for attribute that's going to associate this with the name crust. Right, so this is crust. This is also crust. And as you can see in my example, when I get to labels, each of these are crust. but then we've got crust 1, crust 2, crust 3, and we have to do that using the ID tags. Let's go back. So besides just being the name crust, I have to give this an ID. I'm going to give it ID, and this ID is going to equal crust 1. And this way, in a set of radio buttons, we can name this crust 1. We associate that with crust 1, and we associate it with the ID. Use ID attributes for things to be unique. So in this case, I have to say crust 2. And that's going to be the one that's checked. And in this case, and then another ID, and make that equal to crust 3. So now these labels that I'm creating are going to be associated with those controls by using the ID. In this case, I need to end my label tag, my label element, and I'll do the same thing with hand tossed. So that's for equals crust 3, and then I need my end label. So just like that, now I have labels. So instead of these just being text on the screen, these are going to be labels that actually have functionality once I add this 4 in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to refresh this browser. Now you can see it's a little bit of a distance away instead of being right on top of it. But now when I click on the label, it actually changes the value. And again, that works with checkboxes and radio buttons. I didn't change the checkboxes, so you can see that those haven't changed at all. So that's the end of my video presentation, my video lecture on how to add labels, or the use of labels with other controls, why you would use them. And now you can use that functionality in your web pages.